What's up, guys? This is Christian Brindle with Six Figure Medicare Agent, and I have an absolutely amazing guest with me here today. I have the almighty, the legendary David Duford. Taking the time.
Wow.
I feel like I should start the video out with greetings and salutations, but
there you go.
I want to copy someone else, if you know what I mean.
Hey, I stole that line from someone, so it wouldn't be the first time.
Okay, hey, well that would make me feel a little better about it. Well, Dave, thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking a little bit of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, of course. For anybody that's not familiar with Dave, you must be new to the insurance industry because Dave's been putting out some of the best YouTube insurance agent training content out there. And if you're not familiar with him, we'll put a link down in the description to his YouTube channel. But Dave is very much known for being kind of a final expense guru. But I know you do other things other than that. On top of that, built an agency, written books, just a real celebrity in the industry. But I know you're on here to talk about your new book, The Official Guide to Selling Insurance for New Agents. Talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. So like you said, my beginnings in this business were humble. I could not find a job anywhere else and could only turn to the life insurance business, as many of us probably shared that experience. I started selling final expense, did well, then failed, came back, and eventually turned the ship right, built an agency, and here I am creating content at this point. A lot of my training's been more around the final expense market, but what I've realized in my position, not that I intended it to be this way, but people look at me now more for just generic or general insurance sales and marketing training, not just final expense. And I felt like because the failure rate is so high, most agents fail, we're talking like 90% plus in the first year. I felt like there are specific reasons why this happens, and there's ways to avoid it. And plus, as any insurance agent with experience knows, sometimes how the business is presented is entirely different than how it actually becomes. So I put this book together, The Official Guide to Selling Insurance for New Agents, simply to address that issue. It's a quick read, 100 pages or less, I think. And it just really uncovers all the major landmines and obstacles that new agents would run into in order to give them the best chance of having success in selling insurance.
Hey, well, awesome. I mean, I read your first book and I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great kind of guide to doing final expense. So Dave, as someone, you mentioned it just now, 90+% of insurance agents don't succeed after their first year. I know Cody says that 92% of agents are out of the business within 3 years. And there's all these different statistics all over the place, but it's usually the common denominator is over 90%. What do you think, as someone that's worked with a tremendous amount of agents over the years, what do you think is holding agents back from breaking through and kind of driving that number up?
Man, there's so many variables there.
Loaded question.
Yeah. It's like, where do I begin? I'll address kind of the most pressing. So to me, the big one is that what a lot of people don't realize when they get into this business is that there's a heavy multi-level marketing influence. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it's not so much of the structure of the insurance organization. It's hierarchical in nature, and arguably all industries are like that, even if they're not MLM. It's more of the culture. And what I mean by that is the idea that you've got to recruit your friends and family and anybody with a pulse that can fog a mirror is a good applicant for insurance sales. And the problem becomes when the level of interest in an organization is above in interest in recruiting is above that in producing. You end up having recruits who don't know how to sell anything because they've just been told to go recruit. And what do you think is going to happen when somebody who's untrained and has no experience, even more importantly, trains a new person? Well, of course, the failure rate's going to be higher. We would expect this, right? I mean, give any industry, doctor, the medical industry. If I was trained by a surgeon who never did surgery before, what good of training would that be? It's crazy. Yeah. Why we don't think of that more so in this business is besides me. But there's that. There's other elements that kind of are tangential to that. Like I said, training. A lot of agents aren't trained how to prospect efficiently or to think of this business as a business as opposed to just a job. Leads, commissions to a lesser extent, lots of things. But to me, the MLM influence is a big reason why, and a lack of focusing on agent skill development first before looking at putting a producer into a recruiting role.
Well, I think that's a great point. I mean, it kind of brings me back, it makes me think of that old saying, those who can't do, teach, right? It's really hard for someone to efficiently teach someone how to be a top producer if you've never sold a policy before. Far too common in the business, and I agree with you completely. You're someone that has been really well known for giving not just high quality insurance agent training on a regular, but practical advice, very easy to implement advice. The first time I talked to you, I don't know if you remember this, but you gave me some really, really just easy advice kind of off the record. I'm someone that's been doing Medicare forever. I've done a handful of final expense here and there, but I wanted to do more. And I think I asked you, I was like, how can I sell more final expense? And you're like, have you called your book?
Yeah. Right.
Like, I think I did maybe went through 10 names years ago, and that was about it. And you're like, call your book.
Worked so well you didn't do it anymore.
Right. Yeah. And then, I after our conversation, I did it. We sold, several policies in the next week. I think
right.
$3,000 or $4,000 in commission just like that. That's one thing I've always thought about when I think about you is, practical, easy to implement advice that any agent could kind of come in and implement. But I have a question for you about leads. Let's shift gears to that.
Yeah, please.
And marketing. So a lot of agents nowadays are kind of attracted to the new shiny thing, right? Social media ads. Do you think that the old ways of marketing are still effective? Cold calling, direct mail, those kind of things?
Yeah. Although I'll say, depending on the insurance niche, that some are going to be more effective or work better than others. Like, for example, direct mail. It works great in final expense. It really works good in everything as far as a senior market is involved with. Whereas maybe telemarketing is something where you got to be a little bit more precautious just because there's more regulations to worry about. There's less people to call on, and the quality of the leads have just, for a lot of vendors have dipped. So, but don't get, and I just did a training on talking about social media leads and how I think, at least in the final expense world, they've kind of peaked. I think the quality has gone down, the prices are going up because there's so many people generating them. Just because it's some newfangled idea, which it is, doesn't beat out the tried and true methods that have decades of experience. If anything, you don't want to follow the crowd when it comes to marketing, because you're competing with other people in those same marketing spaces for the limited people that reply. Whereas you could do something else that is out of favor, but still brings good prospects and probably does better because of that.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think, the more saturated something gets, probably the harder it is to get noticed. Whereas, probably, would you say it has a lot to do with kind of staying ahead of the competition?
Describe what you mean. I'm a little confused.
Well, if let's say 10 years ago, a majority of agents were using direct mail for final expense leads or Medicare leads or whatever kind of leads they're getting. And then as social media has kind of evolved, they've kind of shifted away from direct mail over to social media ads. And then that becomes saturated. I've always kind of felt like I've had the most success when I'm doing something that everyone else isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't run with the madness of crowds. It's don't do what everybody else does. Now, that's true up to a point. Sometimes doing what is proven to work is a good idea, but you have to be sensitive to the extremes as well.
Right. And
I think with certain, and again, I'm speaking specifically to final expense. I think that there's just, look, the 50 and older crowd is one of the best demos for advertisement engagement. They click on a lot of ads. There's dozens probably now Facebook final expense lead vendors that are soliciting the same people with multiple agents. There's big organizations built completely around Facebook generation leads. And there's more agents coming into this. So there's going to be a breaking point. There's going to be a point where there's a competitive situation where your client who responds to a Facebook lead also did 2 or 3 other ones as well. And guess what? They're getting nailed on the phone all day long, and they're frustrated and angry. And you don't see that as often with alternative old source type of leads, just because they're not the thing. They're not hot, which is your advantage.
Yeah. I think it's a great point, and I think there's a lot of validity there. Dave, as someone that's trained agents, worked with a lot of agents, seen a lot of agents over the years, you've probably seen plenty of agents that do great right off the bat and they kind of knock it out of the park. But I'm sure you've probably seen just as many, if not more, agents come in and struggle right away. What do the agents do? If you had to pinpoint a couple of things that agents do that just really seem to excel, that the agents that struggle aren't doing, kind of what differentiates a successful agent from an unsuccessful agent if you had to pinpoint?
Mindset. The best agents have eliminated the doubt of their success. In other words, they've burnt the bridges. They don't have a plan B. The nature of having a plan B means that you doubt yourself on some level. And it's easier to revert back to your safe and secure plan B than it is to go all in on your plan A. So, and it's hard to do that, but it's necessary for success in life. It means that you draw a clear line in the sand and say that you're taking a risk on yourself to see if you're going to measure up to something. And that's the only way that you improve in life, is getting uncomfortable. So I think mindset is huge. Other things that successful agents do, big thing is focus as opposed to general approach. So I want a specialist when I recruit an agent. I want them to be a specialist at final expense, a specialist at annuities, or a specialist at Medicare. Not all of the above, but I want them to focus on that one product line that speaks to them the most. It's hard enough to learn and sell one particular product. It's exponentially harder in the beginning when you try to do multiple ones.
Definitely. Yeah.
And if you're around long enough, and over here in the corner, I did this video, or I did this book on interviews with agents. And basically that's what you find, is that agents are all focusing on one thing. And the ones that earn the most are focusing on one thing. So again, why not duplicate that? Because that's kind of a foundational thing. So focus on one product, mindset, of course, and activity. This is a see the people business. If you're not doing sufficient number of appointments, then you're likely going to struggle more. It's funny, like people think, oh, it's a big risk to buy a lot of leads, or it's a big risk to go all in. Well, I would argue it's a bigger risk to try this business and not go all in on activity, because you just aren't exposing yourself to the number of attempts necessary to learn this business, because true learning comes being in the field with prospects.
Right.
And you just short circuit your success. And you need to have a lot of people to see. You need to be fully into it. You need to burn the bridges and give it your all. And if you have that level of commitment, the odds are much higher that you're going to succeed.
Yeah, I think there's so much truth in that. I think that, you see a lot of people come into this business kind of like, they have the idea that they're going to, do it on the side of something, or kind of do it, as a side gig or a side hustle or something like that. And I don't get that, because this business is not a side business. This is a full-time.
It's a business.
A business.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I never quite understood that myself, but we see a lot of agents that kind of come in with that attitude. So I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Part of the problem, I would go so far as to say, is that, agents are it goes back to that first point I made. I think agents are probably recruited under false pretenses. They're told how much money they're going to make. They're given projections on income earning and cost of leads that are not realistic. And they're not given the full truth of what it's like to be in a competitive environment, how your products lay out, how the leads work. And they just sell the good stuff, the good times. Mm-hmm. It's easier to get somebody to join your organization, talking about the good times and talking about, hey, you might run 15 appointments and then not sell a single one, and you've done everything right. That's tough, but then you wouldn't recruit as many. But my argument is you need to tell people this, and you'll find that the better quality people will arise from it if they get an honest, transparent description of what the business is really like.
Yeah. I think it's almost like selling an insurance policy without telling someone a bad thing about it. And they're surprised.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, you've been an upline for a lot of agents over the years. You've seen a lot of uplines, for agents. I see a lot of agents that, maybe they're not getting everything from their upline that they probably should. Maybe they're being taken advantage of if you go that far. But then you also see agents that maybe have unrealistic expectations of their upline. Like I see agents come on and they're like, which upline's going to give me free leads and I've never sold anything?
Right.
Well, why would you get free leads? They have all these other agents that are proven. Well, what is realistic for an agent to expect of an upline when they come into the business, would you say?
Yeah, good question. Absolutely, you should expect someone with tenure, someone with experience. Please do not get sucked into an organization where you don't get actual training based off of the real world. Not just book training is not enough. Okay, you need to talk with somebody who has done this business. Okay, that's the big thing. You should expect support. Okay, sometimes agencies take uplines or make uplines out of top producers, but many times top producers aren't good trainers. They can't really explain why they do what they do, and they don't understand how to coach people out of their mindset issues. So it's important to find a trainer that is not just that good at producing, but also good at explaining, teaching, and coaching. A good insurance agency will also provide a blueprint of success. Okay, you should be able to go up to any agency you're looking to join and say, I want you to tell me, what are you going to do to help me to be successful? What do you got that I can put together as far as the system goes? They should be able to coherently explain right off the bat, here's how our system works, here's why we do it this way, and here's what you need to do, the steps you need to take in order to succeed it. So those are the things at a minimum you should expect. This is a business, like we've said a couple of times, and it's almost like a franchise. You wouldn't buy a Chick-fil-A if you didn't have a operational handbook. It's the same thing in being an insurance business. You need to have a playbook about what to expect and have the support behind you as well.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that's, a great, not only, helpful thing from the upline to give you, but realistic too. It's not unrealistic or anything like that. And coming back to, you saying top producers aren't great trainers, it almost makes me think of like, great professional athletes that aren't good coaches, was heard of, like Isaiah Thomas was a great basketball player, but he wasn't necessarily a great coach.
Yeah.
Coached and,
it's a different skill set, and it's certainly there's a relation. I want a coach who understands how to play basketball and has probably played it on some level, but I don't need to have the best in the world because their mastery is on execution of the game. Whereas, a coach's mastery should be on execution of teaching the game. And it's a little bit different. Yeah,
for sure. For sure. Last question I have for you, Dave, and this is kind of a fun question, something that, I enjoy. You've talked a lot about books on your channel. I've heard you talk about books in other interviews you've done. If you had to pick one book that's made the biggest impact in your life and your business, what would it be?
Specifically the insurance business or just any book in general?
Any book in general.
I have to look at my big stack of books here. It's hard to say for sure.
Or maybe a couple, that have impacted you positively.
I like Ben Feldman's book. Which one? The Feldman Method's a good one. That was useful to see the system. I really like Coach, which is a book on A.L. Williams, which may surprise you.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's on my list to read. I haven't read it yet.
That's really good. So the ghostwriter did a good job of, making this sound like art was, and he probably was well involved with the book, but it's a great book on just just the American dream. He's from a small town in, South Georgia. I believe his dad died and they only had a whole life plan. And he described this crusade against whole trash value insurance, as he likes to say. But he did incredible things that really haven't been seen, like the amount of agents he brought into the business, the amount of premium that was written. And I think part of his ability really changed the dynamics of this business. This used to be a whole life permanent product oriented business, but it for right or wrong, transitioned to permanent or almost entirely term based. And a lot of it has to do with his crusade, as he says. So that's a good book just to see the rise of an incredible businessman. And whether you agree with him or not, a lot of people don't like Primerica and A.L. Williams Company. That's fine. But you can't deny that he's not had a huge impact, because he has. Probably that. What else? You have me curious here. I'm wondering if I've been missing anything important.
I can see 4-Hour Work Week on your bookshelf. That's on mine right behind me.
Yeah, I read that and I was like, I don't know. That's an interest. It was a very intriguing book.
Yes.
But I don't know what to do with myself. I mean, there's only so much like leisure I can do until I'm like,
right.
All right, I'm not playing video games anymore. I'm bored. I've done jiu-jitsu for the week. I got to do something. Like, there's a drive that I have a creative output that I have to do. And it's hard to just ignore that as a part of yourself. And that's almost kind of what that book asks you to do is. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's so true. I remember, my first couple of years in this business, after AEP, I would take like 2 weeks off, 3 weeks off. And I was miserable. I was miserable. I would feel like I don't know what to do with myself. I'm just such a miserable bore when I'm not working, and I can totally identify with that.
Yeah. It's, I mean, you should, if you have a family, you should be taking time off, spending time with your family. I've learned that. I've had to adjust towards it. We do a month-long vacation now in Canada.
That's great.
Just as time away. But I'm not off entirely. I'm still taking calls and helping agents. But you got to obviously, and he talks about that too. What's his name again?
Tim Ferriss.
Tim Ferriss. Yeah, Tim Ferriss. He talks about like taking prolonged vacations, sabbaticals almost. And I think there's some value in that. I think a lot, it's not a, blue sky book without any basis in reality. It's got some good things to consider for an entrepreneur that I think that has put the time in to be successful and could possibly put systems up to reduce workload and live an experienced life, or live a life with experiences, I should say, that is outside of work.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Dave, where can people find your book? Where's the best place to get it?
Go to Amazon, put David Duford in, and you'll see all the books that I sell, including the official guide to selling insurance for new agents. Please leave a comment if you like it or if you hate it. Either is fine with me. I'm open to any and all constructive criticism. And feel free to reach out to me at David Duford on YouTube if you want to see my videos, or my website, which is davidduford.com.
Awesome. Well, Dave, thank you so much for taking the time, and thanks for kind of sharing some of your knowledge and insight. Everybody, I'm going to leave a link down in the description to Dave's YouTube channel, and I'll also leave a link down in the description to his new book on Amazon. So go check it out. Go buy it. If you're new in the business, I recommend it. If you're not new in the business, it's great. I think that it's a great thing to still read, so that way you can kind of help new agents get into the business, effectively and efficiently. So thanks again, Dave, for taking the time.
Sure.
Everybody, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, if you got some value out of it, drop a comment, what you liked, what you didn't like the video, subscribe to the channel for future six-figure Medicare agent content, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.